Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. The Pittsburgh Penguins played all of their classic hits during Tuesday's loss against the New York Islanders, and Pat and I are going to recap that game, plus give you our picks for Warrior Helmet Wednesday right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damping. You can follow him on all social media platforms at Synonym for Wet, and you can follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And finally, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So, Pat, the Penguins' 4-game winning streak came to an end on Tuesday, losing to the New York Islanders 4-2 in very classic fashion. You and I were texting about this last night. The Penguins played all of their hits against the Islanders. They take an early lead. Congratulations to Joona Koppanen for getting his first career NHL goal. Really nice goal, by the way. Great deflection from that point shot. Sidney Crosby later makes it 2-0. He is now 6 points away from breaking the point per game record that he and Wayne Gretzky share. And oh yeah, Pat, he also stands alone now, 4th most points in NHL history on the same team. He passed Wayne Gretzky last night, so congratulations to Sid with that. 1,670. Again, 4th most NHL points on the same team. Next up, Pat, Mario Lemieux. So he's going to probably getting that, I would say, next year, and then we'll have to see if he can climb the list a little bit more by the end of his career. But again, congrats to Sid on that. But they play a really nice second period. They get some good chances on Ilya Sorokin. Tristan Jarry continues to make some really good saves. But then they just fell asleep in the third period. That was a terrible third period. It all started because Kris Letang made a really poor play at the point, not even 20 seconds into the third, gifting Kyle Palmieri a breakaway. He hits the post, but then it banks off Jarry and goes in the back of the net. I'm not really going to blame Jarry too much for that one. It goes off the post, hits his back, and goes in. I mean, that's just, again, pure bad luck here, people. And that was also a really bad play by Letang. You cannot lose the puck like that at the blue line. I thought Letang was horrendous last night. It really just stinks to see his game deteriorate throughout this year. You won't find a bigger Kris Letang simp than me. I have loved him throughout his career here in Pittsburgh. He is going to go down as, one of the greatest players to ever play for this franchise. I think his number is going to be retired right after he's done playing in Pittsburgh. But it just stinks that his skating has gone away. His decision-making has not been nearly as good. It really just sucks to see it. As you say, Pat, last week, Father Time, it continues to remain undefeated. Carlson last night was okay. He was better than Letang, let's say that. But still, I wanted to see a little bit more from him. But again, after that, the Islanders quickly tie it 2-2. And then once that happened, you knew they were going to lose this game because every game against the Islanders is the exact same. Penguins take an early lead. They make it a multi-goal lead. They hold it. They take it into the third period, and then they blow it. It feels like this happens every single time against the Islanders. And we all know this team's not very good, but you can't stop skating like that in the third period. You have built up at least a little bit of goodwill for these last 4 and almost 3/4 games, and then you just lay a complete egg in the third period. The power play was atrocious last night. We'll get to that a little bit later. Not nearly good enough in the third.
No, and it kind of runs counter to what we've been saying the last couple weeks about this Penguins team, is that they have a lot of heart, they fight, they battle despite their shortcomings. They don't really just give up on games. I don't know if I can say they gave up on last night's game, but they had a very good effort through 40 minutes. I thought they played as well as they could, given the roster restrictions that they have on this team this year. But the third period just was a lot of lack of effort, a lot of lack of smart decisions. And I want to compare two of the goals that the Islanders scored in the third period. The first goal, which awful decision-making by Kris Letang, leads to a breakaway. and then just a bad bounce off the post. It hits Jarry's back. It bounces in. You can't really blame him for that. You can blame him a little bit because he got beat clean to the post, but 9 times out of 10, the puck hits the post and it ricochets back to the slot or into the corner or wherever else. That was the 1 time out of 10 that it hits the goalie's back and goes in. You can't really do much about that. I did see on what was ultimately the game-winning goal for the Islanders, a lot of people upset with Erik Karlsson's decision that led to the goal, but that was, to me, another bad bounce. He actually made a good play on the puck carrier. The puck just happened to bounce behind him after he makes that play. And I want Karlsson to make those kind of plays, not just because he's Erik Karlsson, but because that's a smart defensive play. They didn't really have a lot of flow coming through the neutral zone, and he steps up to disrupt it even more by stepping up on the puck carrier. You can't control bounces. It would have been nice if that would have just ricocheted back into the Islanders zone, no harm, no foul. But it's another moment where the puck bounces behind him and it leads to that half break that the Islanders get to get the winning goal. So I understand the frustration people have with Erik Karlsson. I have the same frustrations for the most part. He has not lived up to the billing we expected with Erik Karlsson when he was acquired 2 off seasons ago, but I can't sit here and pretend like, oh, that's typical Erik Karlsson right there. He made the right play, and sometimes even when you make the right play, the puck doesn't bounce your way. It's part of the sport. So, I mean, overall, the disappointing part of this, on one hand, is they threw away a good 40-minute effort by falling asleep for 20 minutes. On the other hand, let's call this what this is. This was a very paper tiger win streak. They were riding hilariously during what is essentially St. Patrick's Day week in Pittsburgh and in the country, a wild PDO bender, good week to go on a bender. And eventually it crashed back down to earth. They were getting horribly outshot. They were getting horribly outchanced. Jarry was making the saves he needed to make, which he did again last night. I can't really blame him for much of anything last night. And they were getting scoring. Last night, the scoring dried up after 40 minutes, and they continued to hemorrhage chances against.
Hey, that's fair. I think with regards to what you said about Karlsson, I agree with that. If people want to blame defensemen for 2 of the goals against, Letang for letting that puck go past him to allowing Cal Palmieri to get a breakaway, and then Connor Timmins, he's been great since coming over from Toronto, but can we please stop the defenseman dive on passes right by the goal line? Pat, it doesn't work. Why do we keep doing this?
Just in general, just in general. I mean, I get that it's base instinct and you're not really, you can't take instinct out of a human being.
I know.
It's just inherent.
But how many times
but how many times do we have to see a defenseman diving and sliding and it just leads to a chance against? And diving that close to the net, it's just never going to work because you're both taking yourself out of the play and you're putting your goalie in a bad position because they're not going to be able to challenge with you prone on the ice right in front of them.
Right. No, I hear you. One more thing I want to get to before we get to break here. I said during the preview that I wanted to see the power play really feast on one of the worst penalty kills in the league, and they didn't do anything of the sort. I did not like the movement on the power play in the third period, especially. They had a couple power play chances, and the zone entries for the most part were okay, but they're not doing anything with them. Once they were gaining the zone, they had a little bit of control. They were getting stripped of the puck, was going back down the other way. They weren't zipping it around with the authority that we've seen them do for most of this season. They weren't getting anywhere near the high danger areas. For as much as I have liked Kevin Hayes' game throughout this season, he was really bad on the top power play last night, especially towards the end of the third period when they had that chance with about 5 minutes to go. I would have just taken Kevin Hayes off and put Evgeny Malkin on. Like, I understand what Mike Sullivan is trying to do, at least a little bit with some of these split units. But when you really need a goal in that situation and you just blown the lead to the Islanders, thanks to Pierre Engvall, who was on waivers before the season, by the way, you need to send out all your A guys there. That is not the time to run split power play units. So I was not happy with the power play last night, especially against the second worst penalty kill in the league.
You got to make hay against a team like that. You really do. I'll say this much. Kevin Hayes did earn some looks on the top unit, given his performances recently. And he has value on a power play. He absolutely does. But to your point about the puck movement, about the overall execution, the problem last night was more than anything, Kevin Hayes, for as good as he has been as a Penguin, doesn't operate at the same speed, both literally and figuratively, as some of the Penguins' best players. And you saw that come to fruition on the power plays last night. The decision making was a half step behind. The passes were a half step behind. And there were a couple moments where they got what should have been grade A looks, but they ended up not being that good because just a half step behind. He found Sidney Crosby streaking in on the back door, but it was a half step too late. And if you say you have an Evgeny Malkin or a Kris Letang or Erik Karlsson or even Brian Rust, and even you could even say Rickard Rakell in that situation, they probably find Sidney Crosby at the right time, and he's got essentially an entire open net to shoot at. Because Kevin Hayes is that just slight half step behind, just misses them, and what should have been a grade A chance falls apart.
And there was also multiple instances last night where he came into the zone with control. He's holding the puck, doing his thing, but he's not shooting it when there was clear opportunities to shoot it. Like it felt like he was overthinking it at times on the top power play. He's got to not do that if he wants to stay on the top power play. Again, especially late in the third period, I would just slow it up there. I think that was a mistake from Mike Sullivan, in my opinion. And then also on the 6-on-5, I understand Sidney Crosby blew a tire there, Pat. You cannot send that puck back to the point. There is two guys coming right at the point. You need to send that puck to the corner. There is no excuse to make that play there. I think that was a pretty rare boneheaded play from Sada. He knows better, I think, in that circumstance. But I think that'll do it for this first segment. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to discuss Tristan Jarry's performance in this game, plus discuss Kolyachonok's performance and why he seemed to be benched in the third period for reasons that Pat and I don't understand, I guess. But that's coming up here in the second segment. But before we get to that, we got to tell you all about our first sponsor, and that is Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just about a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and I save a lot more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half of your first order. And oh yeah, we're not done. We still got to tell you all about another sponsor, and that is Game Time. There's nothing like watching basketball live, the energy of the crowd, the sound of sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even a celebrity sighting courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's newest feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. I just checked the Game Time app, and there are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up, including the NCAA tournament tonight, 2 more first 4 games in Dayton, and then the first round officially starts on Thursday, one of my favorite times of the year. Game Time Picks even highlight super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, we're back here in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Dam. So, Pat, I thought Kolyachonok was playing really well those first 2 periods. The skating really continues to shine, man. Like, I'll keep saying it on the show. He really does skate like the wind. He continues to be really poised on the ice. And trust me, people, I know this is a very small sample size. I don't think this guy is going to be a long-term answer in the top 4 or anything like that. I think best case is that he's a really good option for your bottom pair. The only reason he's playing top pairing minutes right now is because A, Ryan Shea is hurt, and B, P.O. Joseph is hurt. So yeah, they kind of have no choice. You're not going to put Matt Grizzlick up there because his numbers with Letang are not that good, and you're not going to put Ryan Graves up there, for God's sakes, people. That's not. We saw how that happened last season. It was not good. But he's so smooth. He looks really poised every time he has the puck. The skating is nice. And I thought he was having a pretty good couple periods. I know the underlying numbers disagree with that. I usually like using the numbers as a good tool for what my eyes are seeing. Well, the numbers disagree with my eye test, Pat, but hey, I liked his game through two periods last night. But then he got benched in the third period, only saw a couple of shifts, and I don't get it. We just had this conversation about Mike Sullivan on our Tuesday show and how he was speaking to Josh Yowie in that article on The Athletic, and he's like, oh yeah, I hear the noise. I know what people say about me about playing younger players. I disagree with it, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, Mike, you're not really doing yourself any favors by benching this player when I went back and watched his shifts this morning. He didn't do anything wrong. Again, Kris Letang was the one that screwed up, not even 20 seconds into the period, getting the Islanders back in that game. And then after that, you're just kind of benching Kolyachonok for reasons, because I noticed it throughout the period last night. The defensive pairs were juggled, and I'm like, okay, so someone was benched, and then I was like, oh yeah, it was Kolyachonok. So Mike Sullivan, man, what are we doing here? He didn't make a mistake, but you're still shortening the bench for unknown reasons. Pat, what are your thoughts? Because to me, man, I don't understand this.
I'm gonna try to work through this live to tape on the show because I on the surface, I'm in agreement with you that I don't get why he was benched. Now, I'm not doing the sports talk radio thing where I'm trying to find a way to take the other side and disagree with you and turn it into a debate. It's more just me trying to figure out the reasoning. The first thing that comes to mind when you talk about, hey, Letang had a bunch of egregious mistakes, continued to play. You also have to remember it's Kris Letang. He's one of the best defensemen to have ever played for this franchise. He's come up big in massive moments, and the track record is there through hundreds of games of showing that he can handle recovery from a mistake. On the other hand, you look at Kolyachonok, he's played all of 69 games in his career. He's put up 14 points. Yeah, he's on a nice little run here where he's had assists in the last 2 games, but you're not turning to him for offense. It got to the point where the Penguins did need an offensive push, and you're really not going to go to him, because the other thing you and I noticed looking at the shift charts, basically everybody who was on the fourth line in the third period watched the third period.
Right.
So it was probably, at least if I had to put a guess on it, a shortening of the bench and putting out your more offensive-minded players, giving them more looks, whether it's double shift or every other shift, and he was just a victim of that numbers game. On the other hand, I look at this and think, the kid's playing solid. He's got the wheels. He has a good first pass, doesn't make a ton of mistakes. There's no risk in putting him out there. At the very least, you can put him out there to give Kris Letang, Erik Karlsson, Matt Grizzlick a little bit of a break to catch their breath before sending them right back out there. So, I mean, I don't quite understand the decision behind benching him, but I can at least find some logic to why you might sit him in this third period. But at the end of the day, the kid's been fine. It wasn't like he made, because we talked about this yesterday. We have seen younger players get yanked, and it's been after bad decisions. It's not like they were just yanked for no reason. There's a couple cases here and there, but you point to a pretty egregious mistake and go, well, yeah, he made a pretty bad mistake. You're going to get benched after that. For Kolyachonok, it hasn't really happened yet.
And there was no bad decision that he made during the third period. Again, I went back and watched his shifts this morning when I turned on my wonderful Fubo TV and I rewinded Sportsnet Pittsburgh, and I did not see a mistake that, for me, should have gotten him benched. I still am dumbfounded by the decision. Mike still needs to be a lot better with that type of stuff. Again, you can say all this stuff to Josh, which, Josh, great friend of the show, really nice article. You can say all this stuff to him, but you need to put it into practice, because I don't need to see that stuff happening next season, especially when Rucker McGorty and Billy Koivunen are going to be ready. And there's an outside shot that Harrison Brunick could be ready as well, based on the camp and the preseason that he had before this past season. One more thing before we get to break and we get to Warrior Helmet Wednesday. Tristan Jarry, I thought he was really good again in this game. The first 2 goals, really not his fault. The third one, I was originally going to crucify him for that because I thought he was off his angle, and he was a little bit, but the puck also did go off Ryan Graves' stick. So I think that kind of fooled him a little bit there, but he still made a lot of big saves, especially in the first 2 periods. I'm not really going to blame him too much for this loss.
No, 34 saves, puts up a .919 save percentage in a losing effort. And the Islanders outshot the Penguins in all 3 periods and overall throughout the game, 38-22. So you really can't put any of the goals on him or even the loss on him. He takes the loss, but it was another encouraging start from him. He played a very confident game. He was challenging shooters. He was making a couple desperation saves as well, which is something we don't often see from him. So that was another encouraging sign. Again, this is, I've said it before, it's only a good thing for this franchise. I know everybody wants the team to lose and to tank and get the higher draft pick and all of that, but in the long term, not even long term, the medium term, the best thing for the long-term health of this franchise is for him to figure it out, because then you can either move him or he just figures it out and you can deal with having him and a couple other goalies compete for a single net. And you've got, at the very least, a couple options that you can use to stabilize the net over the next couple years. But I mean, last night, it's a 5th consecutive start where he plays very well and makes the saves he needs to make. And at the end of the day, all you can realistically ask from a goaltender on any team is that they give you a chance. And Tristan Jarry gave them a chance last night.
Yeah, he more than kept them in that game, especially in the third period where the Islanders just came out like a house on fire. It was a pretty big repeat of their last game against Florida, too. They were down 2-0 with only 13:30 to go in the third period, and they just blitzed the Panthers at home. Wasn't with 13:30 to go in this one, but still 2-0 deficit going into the third period, and they just blitzed the Penguins in that period. A little bit of deja vu with that one. But hey, the loss in regulation, that does help the tanking purposes a little bit, Pat. Hey, I had to say it at some point during the show. It does help the tanking purposes that they lost in regulation. But that'll do it for this second segment. Coming up to end the show, it's Wednesday. You know what that means. Warrior Helmet Wednesday. Pat and I are going to give out our Player of the Week award for the Warrior Helmet for this last week. And I think we both know who we're going with for this last week, though there are a lot of very good candidates. But before we get to that, we got to tell you all about our final sponsor, and that is Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives business flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. And posting a job is free and simple on Upwork, and within a day with multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork.com. Remember, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. I can't wait for the NCAA tournament. Every time we play that little 30-second ad, just gets me more amped to turn on my TV tomorrow and watch all the NCAA tournament games. It really is one of the best times of the year if you're a sports fan. But it's time for Warrior Helmet Wednesday. Pat and I give out our Player of the Week awards. And man, there's quite a few players to choose from, man. Connor Timmins, Connor Dewar, Tristan Jarry, Sidney Crosby, Ricard Raquel. The list goes on, people. But I didn't give it to him last week. I will give it to him this week, though, Pat. And that is Tristan Jarry. He's had 3 really good starts over the last week, was great against the Blues, 9-14. I know he allowed 3 against the Devils on Saturday. He was 889, but he still made a lot of really big saves in that game. And yeah, I know they lost against the Islanders, but he was still 919 in that game. I've really liked his performances since March 9th against the Minnesota Wild. He deserves this Warrior helmet to me. I know I could have given it to Connor Dewar, who has also been tremendous. I think you might be giving it to him. I could have given it to Connor Timmins. Sid easily as well with everything he's doing. Ricard Raquel with the way he's also been playing over the last week. But I have to give credit where it's due. Tristan Jarry has been a completely different goaltender over the last week and a half, and he's been really good, especially this last week. I will give it to number 35, Tristan Jarry.
It's a good pick for a second week in a row. He really has stabilized since coming back up from Wilkes-Barre, and I know it's kind of annoying for us, for Penguins fans, that now he decides to return to form that we've seen in the past. But I mean, at the end of the day, what can you do about it? Really good choice. I kind of went back and forth on this. I gave it to Jarry last week. Thought about doing it 2 weeks in a row, but this was. I know you said there were a lot of good candidates, but I have to lean on what I said earlier in the episode. This was a winning streak that was based on a PDO bender. They were not exactly playing great. They were just finding ways to score goals. Tristan Jarry was making saves, but they were getting pretty badly outplayed in a lot of these games and somehow finding a way to get a victory. So looking at up and down the results from the last week, it was also a team effort. There's a lot of guys who contributed to this win streak. It wasn't just Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Carlson, and Rust, and Raquel just carrying them across the finish line. So I'm going to go with Connor Dewar. I think 3 goals in the last 3 games. Obviously, one of them was an empty net in a 2-goal performance against the Devils over the weekend. But I've liked his game a lot since he's come over from Toronto. I'm not going to oversell it and pretend like he's some diamond in the rough or some great find that is going to blossom into a great player, because he is only 25. He'll be 26 at the start of next season, but he has shown he can be a stabilizing player in the bottom 6. He's not going to wow you. He's not going to blow you away. He's not going to score 20 to 30 goals, but he looks like a good bottom 6 player that can chip in 5, 10, 15 max goals, give you some good depth option, play a responsible game. And since becoming a Penguin, he's done exactly that. I've liked his game a lot, and I thought he had a pretty good week.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And I even tweeted this during the game last night because there was a couple instances, especially in the first period, where he was forechecking his butt off. And he's been doing that ever since coming over from Toronto. And one more thing about his game, Pat, he forms a really nice duo with Blake Lizotte on the 4th line. Very small sample size. Give me more minutes of them together, because you're seeing Lizotte start to cook a little bit more over the last week and a half. It's no wonder, by the way, you actually give him a competent line mate. You can see what he can do. He's not having 2 anchors next to him. And yeah, I know Achari is still next to him at times during this season. We have to see if Achari is even on the team next year. But I like Dewar and Lizotte together. We know that Mike Sullivan likes to work in duos for a lot of his lines before, finalizing that line with another player. I think you're going to see, if he keeps it up, I think you're going to see a lot more of Dewar and Lizotte together going into next season. I think they're going to keep Dewar, obviously, if he keeps this up. I know he's an RFA, but I think he has shown quite a bit so far, and I'm really happy with the way he's playing. Again, as I said on Tuesday, he's a feisty little fella. He goes to the front of the net. He gets his nose dirty. I like his game quite a bit as a 4th liner, and I'm excited to see where it continues down the stretch of this season and hopefully into next season as well, if the sample size continues to be really nice. Do you have anything else to add about this game or going forward? The Penguins don't play again until Friday now.
No, I mean, really, at the end of the day, that was That was, like we said, they played the hits. But to your point about Dewar, I think that's a good option to bring back. He's going to be an RFA. It's not going to cost you a lot of money, and you see what you have in him, whether it's for 1 year or 2 years. I think it's a pretty low risk, high reward guy that you can bring back, and he brings some value to your bottom six.
Yep. And with that, I think that's going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this one. Remember, we'll be back with another episode for you all on Thursday to discuss everything Penguins related. And then Friday, same thing, but we'll get you all set for Penguins Blue Jackets. That's another big game, especially for the Blue Jackets, as they are trying to nail down one of those playoff spots in the Eastern Conference, and the Penguins will try to play spoiler in that game against one of their rivals. But again, that'll do it for this one. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back on Thursday.